Welcome to the world of political platforms, a place where every policy and promise is carefully crafted to win votes and shape the future. But did you know that nearly 70% of voters don't fully understand the nuances of party platforms? It's true according to a recent Gallup poll. Imagine this. In the 2020 US elections, just 40% of voters could accurately identify the key differences between the major parties' healthcare plans. It's not just about slogans or campaign ads. It's about deep-seated beliefs and strategic decisions that influence every aspect of government. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers of political platforms and reveal what's really driving the choices of your favorite parties. We'll explore how core values shape policies, how global trends influence local politics, and the role of internal party factions. Plus, we'll dive into how party messaging is designed to sway voters and win hearts. Get ready for a journey through the complex world of politics, where every decision is a piece of a much larger puzzle. Stay tuned to uncover the secrets behind the platforms that shape our world. Chapter 1. The Ideological Blueprint. Understanding core values. Every political party has a foundation built on core values. These values aren't just slogans, they're deeply held beliefs that shape every policy and decision. For instance, take the Democratic Party's emphasis on social equality and the Republican Party's focus on individual freedom. These ideologies guide how they approach issues like taxation and healthcare. Did you know that 85% of Democrats believe the government should do more to solve problems, while only 32% of Republicans agree? That's according to a Pew Research study. This stark contrast highlights how ideological differences influence party platforms. Historically, political platforms are rooted in philosophical traditions. Republicans, for example, draw heavily from classical liberalism, valuing economic freedom and limited government. On the other hand, Democrats are often influenced by progressive ideals, advocating for a more active government role in addressing social issues. Famed political theorist John Rawls once said, "Justice is the first virtue of social institutions." This quote resonates with the Democratic platform, which often prioritizes social justice. In contrast, Republicans might lean towards Friedrich Hayek's belief that freedom is crucial to avoid tyranny. Understanding these core values helps voters see beyond the sound bites. It's like knowing the ingredients in a recipe. It's essential for grasping the final dish. Ideology isn't just theory, it's the blueprint that drives real-world policies. Chapter 2. The Policy Puzzle. Decoding Key Proposals. Once you understand a party's core values, you can start to see how they turn those values into specific policies. Think of it as a puzzle. Each piece represents a policy that fits into the broader picture. For example, if a party values economic equality, you'll see policies like progressive taxation or increased funding for public education. According to a 2022 survey by Gallup, 57% of Americans say the government should play a significant role in solving the nation's problems. This belief drives many Democratic policies like expanding healthcare access. Republicans, who often prioritize individual responsibility, might counter with policies that reduce government involvement in healthcare, like promoting private insurance options. Consider how each party approaches climate change. Democrats, guided by their value of collective responsibility, support policies like the Green New Deal, which aims to drastically reduce carbon emissions. Republicans, valuing economic freedom, often propose market-based solutions like tax incentives for clean energy. It's important to note that these policies aren't just theoretical, they have real impacts. For instance, countries with high taxation and redistribution like Sweden often score high in global happiness indexes. This suggests that policies reflecting collective welfare can lead to positive societal outcomes. But policies can also be a double-edged sword. For instance, while a higher minimum wage can reduce poverty, it might also lead to job losses in small businesses. It's a balancing act, and understanding the policy puzzle helps voters see the trade-offs involved. Chapter 3. The Power of Persuasion, Messaging and Rhetoric. Let's shift gears and talk about how parties sell their platforms to the public. It's not enough to have the right policies, you need to communicate them effectively. That's where messaging and rhetoric come into play. Think of it as the wrapping on a gift. Even the best ideas need the right packaging to appeal to voters. Political messaging is all about connecting with emotions. For instance, the phrase "Make America Great Again" isn't just a slogan, it's a call to nostalgia and a sense of lost pride. According to a study from the University of Michigan, emotional appeals in political ads can increase voter turnout by up to 10%. On the flip side, Democrats often use language that appeals to empathy and social justice. Phrases like "fight for 15" in the context of raising the minimum wage invoke fairness and equality. Language like this isn't just persuasive, it's a strategic tool to align with the party's core values. There's a psychological aspect to this as well. Humans are wired to respond to stories and metaphors, which is why you'll hear politicians using them frequently. For example, referring to the economy as a machine that needs to be fixed resonates more with voters than simply talking about policy changes. Interestingly, research by George Lakoff, a cognitive linguist, shows that conservatives and progressives often frame issues differently due to their underlying metaphors. Conservatives might use a strict father metaphor, emphasizing discipline and order, while progressives might lean on a nurturing parent metaphor, focusing on care and support. Effective rhetoric isn't just about winning elections, it's about shaping how people think. For example, terms like death tax versus estate tax can dramatically change public perception, even though they refer to the same policy. Understanding these strategies gives voters insight into how parties craft their messages. It's not just about what they say, but how they say it. And in today's media-driven world, that can make all the difference. Quick pause. Subscribe to stay updated, then let's jump right back in. Chapter 4. Faction Frenzy. The impact of intra-party divisions. Inside every major political party, there's a mix of beliefs and opinions. These internal factions can significantly influence a party's platform. Think of it as a family with different members arguing over what's best for everyone. In the end, the party's platform is often a compromise between these competing viewpoints. Take the Democratic Party, for example. It has a progressive wing that pushes for bold changes like universal healthcare and free college tuition. Then there's the moderate wing, which prefers incremental changes and seeks to appeal to a broader electorate. A 2021 Gallup poll showed that 49% of Democrats identify as liberal, while 35% consider themselves moderate. This split can lead to tensions when crafting a platform. On the Republican side, there's a similar divide. The party has traditional conservatives focused on fiscal discipline and limited government. But there's also a growing populist faction that prioritizes issues like immigration and trade. This factionalism became especially visible during the Trump era, with populist rhetoric dominating the party's platform. These divisions can sometimes lead to public disputes. For instance, in 2020, there was a significant debate within the Democratic Party about how far left the platform should go. Progressives wanted sweeping changes, while moderates warned against alienating centrist voters. The result was a platform that tried to strike a balance but left some members feeling unsatisfied. Intra-party divisions aren't new. Historically, parties have always had to manage factions. The Federalists and Anti-Federalists, for example, were early American factions that shaped the country's political landscape. This ongoing tug-of-war within parties can make it hard for voters to see a clear, unified message. But these internal debates can also be healthy. They force parties to evolve and adapt to new challenges. It's like iron sharpening iron. Factions push each other to refine their ideas and strategies. Voters should be aware of these dynamics because they often explain why parties make certain policy choices. Chapter 5. Global Influence. How international trends shape local politics. Political ideas don't exist in a vacuum. They're influenced by what's happening around the world. Global trends can significantly shape party platforms, especially in today's interconnected world. It's like watching a domino effect. What starts in one country often spreads to others. For example, the rise of populism in Europe has had a ripple effect on American politics. Parties in the US have adopted similar rhetoric and policies, particularly around issues like immigration and trade. According to a study by the European University Institute, populist parties gained about 15% more votes in Europe over the past decade, which has influenced how US parties approach these issues. Climate change is another area where global trends are shaping local politics. The Paris Agreement, an international treaty on climate change, has pushed many countries to adopt greener policies. This global pressure has influenced party platforms in the US, with Democrats advocating for aggressive climate action, while Republicans debate the economic impacts of such measures. It's not just policies that are influenced, campaign strategies are too. For instance, digital campaigning techniques pioneered by political movements in India and Brazil have been adopted by US parties. The use of WhatsApp to mobilize voters, a strategy popularized in Brazil, is now being explored in American elections. Interestingly, ideas about healthcare are also influenced by international models. The concept of universal healthcare, which is a staple in many European countries, has gained traction in the US political discourse. Bernie Sanders' proposal for Medicare for all is partly inspired by systems in countries like Canada and the UK. These global influences remind us that politics is a constantly evolving landscape. Parties must adapt not only to local demands but also to global trends. Understanding this helps voters see the bigger picture. It's not just about what's happening in their country, it's about how the world's changing too. Chapter 6. Voter Voices, the feedback loop between parties and the public. The relationship between political parties and voters is like a conversation. Parties put out their platforms and voters respond, either by supporting them or turning away. This feedback loop is crucial because it forces parties to adjust their strategies to stay relevant. According to Pew Research, about 40% of voters in the US identify as independents, which means they're not firmly attached to any party. This makes them a key demographic that parties must win over. To do this, parties often tweak their platforms based on voter feedback, especially after elections. For example, after the 2016 election, the Democratic Party realized it needed to address the concerns of working-class voters who felt left behind by globalization. This led to a stronger emphasis on economic issues in their platform, like raising the minimum wage and expanding access to education. On the Republican side, the rise of populism showed that many voters were frustrated with the status quo. In response, the party shifted its focus towards issues like immigration reform and trade protectionism. This wasn't just about changing policies, it was about responding to voter demands for a more populist approach. Voter feedback also influences how parties communicate their messages. For instance, data from the 2020 election showed that suburban voters were increasingly concerned about healthcare. Both parties adjusted their messaging to address these concerns, with Democrats emphasizing the protection of pre-existing conditions and Republicans focusing on lowering prescription drug costs. Interestingly, this feedback loop isn't just reactive. Sometimes parties try to anticipate voter concerns before they become widespread. For instance, tech regulation is becoming a hot topic, and both parties are starting to include more detailed proposals in their platforms, even though it's not yet a top voter priority. This dynamic interaction between parties and voters is a reminder that political platforms are never set in stone. They're living documents that evolve based on the needs and demands of the electorate. For voters, understanding this process is key to making informed decisions at the ballot box. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content and exclusive updates.